Hello everyone, welcome to a Nightcast. For those of you who do not know these, a Nightcast a is a radio show style thing that I did. And for those of you who've been around long enough and have known the channel for over 9 years, I've been around the channel for 9 years. I mean, the channel's been around for, well, channel's been around for channel who've been around for the channel for 9 years will know that there used to be all night chats. I used to talk outside, and then they used to call night talks, and then eventually I stopped them after 81. So this is entry 82 of the Nightcast. So hopefully I'm reviving these. So hello everybody. Today is June. Well, it was gonna be June 4th, but it's June 5th. So 2024. Hello everybody. I wanted to dedicate. Usually when I do these, I do it because of an anniversary or some happening in life. And well, yesterday was the 9th anniversary of my grandfather passing. And I kind of wanted to do one to pay tribute to him because he was a very important person in everybody's life, including my family's life. He was the astute Italian gentleman and quite the storyteller, quite the wisecrack when he wanted to be. I've told many stories about him. You guys can watch the other tributes throughout the years on the 4th or the 5th. Throughout the different years and stuff like that. Because I can't go one, because I think I've gone a couple years without paying tribute to him, and I've thought of him, and I've always said a couple of prayers here and there, and his spirit is always with me and stuff like that. But I wanted to do a radio show just to commemorate the night. I'm going to do a 10th one next year. 10th anniversary next year, so this time next year. So but yeah, so you guys know my grandfather Joseph Anthony Dominicucci was born in 1929. Was born in 1929, October 1929, and yes, he was born right during the Great Depression, right as the Great Depression rolled into North America. So my grandfather was a Depression kid, so I usually don't tell about his life. I'm going to tell about his life now because I feel it's just important. So he was born in 1929, and he was born here in Boston to Italian immigrants, Francis Nicola and Antonio Dominicucci, who was my great-great-great-grandfather. I don't know who my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is because he was over in Italy, because he grew up over in Italy, because Antonio and Francis grew over in Italy, and they came from, I believe, Naples, which is like the south side of Italy, not Sicily. Sicily's a little different, but so he was born in 29, and he lived during the Depression, and very resourceful, and he learned to be a very resourceful man during the Depression, especially during the Depression and the war years, in the 1930s and the 1940s. So my grandfather lived through the Great Depression, Pearl Harbor, the Nazi regime, and all the Axis powers, and the start of the Cold War, at the end of the Second World War, and stuff like that. But he learned to be very resourceful early on. I remember all the stories. They would trade copper, newspaper, glass bottles, everything, anything that they could barter with, because money wasn't very scarce back then. Money was very scarce back then, hence the Depression. And he taught, and he told me little things that they used to do. to pick copper wires, bottles, newspapers. They used to bundle up newspapers and sell them for milk and cheese and all this other stuff because you had to have stuff to barter with because you couldn't really use money because, as I said, money was scarce back then because no one had one. And unemployment was bad. But somehow they figured out a way how to survive, and they figured out a way how to survive, and they were able to. And my grandfather was able to. My grandfather was able to, provide for his family because he provide for help provide with his family because his father was a very good man, but at a very young age, I think he was 7, 8, 9 years old when he started to work, and he started working packing groceries, which, funny enough, I started doing when I first started working in high school, or in grade school. Well, in high school because I didn't do any work in grade school. But it was fitting that I actually was that I bagged groceries, and this was during a time when people had to ration again. He lived during a lot of time where you had to ration a lot of stuff, and you couldn't be very wasteful. Not like today, unfortunately. And what was cool was the supermarket that he worked at, which was a mom and pop style one. Not this. It wasn't this big chain that it is today. It was a family run one, family run chain that was very local and a lot of like a farmer's market or something like that, And since he grew up in Boston, he lived near a lot of Italian immigrants, so you could only imagine, it was a bunch of hand gesture and a bunch of scratchy voices and stuff like that. And he was, and my grandfather actually told me, he goes, he was telling me one story about how they used to not only just bag groceries, they used to deliver to the community. And he goes, do you know how they have that Peapod delivery service from Shaw's and everything like that? You know how they deliver and you have to pay a ton of money? I said, yeah, we're Peapod. He goes, we did that long before that. We had a cart and a bicycle that we used to attach a hook to, and we used to take it to people, and people who were older, because there was a lot of people that my parents knew in the community that were older and couldn't go to the grocery store because they were older or they were in wheelchairs or they were disabled back then. And he goes, we had to go to the grocery, especially older folks that couldn't get out and about, couldn't afford to take public transport or just were advised to stay indoors. So my grandfather actually took part in the precursor to Peapod, but back in the 40s. This was so. I think somebody got the idea that if they deliver milk and papers, you can deliver food. So, and I'm pretty sure they had an ice box or some fridge box or something like that in their cart, sort of like an ice cream thing, so you could keep like frozen things cold and stuff like that. Because they really didn't have a fridge, a really decent fridge. Like ice boxes existed, so you could put frozen stuff in there and the ice and stuff like that. If you guys have seen Three Stooges shorts, you'll know. The ice box is this big thing on wheels. So he started so he actually was part of the whole Peapod thing. And it's actually funny because I'm the one who was part of many firsts in my job at Target. So I was the originator of a lot of things there, and doing carts and filling spill stations and stuff like that, and making sure that I kept on it, and they put a good system when they came through. I was kind of one of the originators, one of the adopters of that. So, but I think my grandfather in helping, be part of the precursor to Peapod was hilarious. So, he was always a tinkerer or an inventor or a guy who was always pioneer of that sort of thing. So we have so we probably have a bunch of Italians in Boston, and then a bunch of Italians in Boston to thank for Peapod. Um, and seeing as the Italians were always about community and family and keeping people together, that sort of makes sense. I just wish normal manufacturers wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, this is Stu Frankel." It started all the way with my grandfather and some grocery store that probably isn't there anymore. But um, so yeah, so he went to that, and then in the 50s, in the 40s and 50s, he obviously met my grandmother, and he went off to the war. And um, my grandfather was always an interesting fella when it came to meeting people and dropping lines. He could be endearing, and he could be very, very. You could be kind of a wiseacre when it came to insults or just pickup lines or whatnot. But I guess he was part of a choir. He was part of a choir, and so was my grandmother, or she was part of some women's group or some women's rights group. Some girls' rights group or some some women's group that they had, or a reading group. I can't remember, or they were part of the choir too. I forget. And one day she'd show up, and my grandfather, being the wiseacre he was, he was asking one of my grandmother's friends, or one of the people that my grandmother knew. He goes, "Where's the snot?" And he was telling me this years later. He goes, "Where's the redhead snot with the beret?" And that's kind of how he kind of told my mother, my snot with the beret. I don't think my grandmother was really a wise ass. I think she was kind of she was a strong type, so she was very strong-willed. So my grandmother was strong-willed, so I think and she was strong-willed, he was strong-willed, and they were both, she was from an Irish background, he was from an Italian background, and back then, he didn't really, back then they really didn't look each other eye to eye, because the Italians and the Irish were too different. The Irish kind of looked at the Italians as the minority, like the minority back then. But my grandfather was way more resourceful than that, and they showed that could happen. So they met, they dated. My grandfather obviously went over from the war. They dated during the war, and then eventually they married in '54. And they were blissfully married for 61 years. So. And in that time, and my grandfather lived till the ripe age of 85. And in that time, my grandfather was a bombardier. He was a grocery man. He was a bagger. He was the inventor of the producer Peapod. He was a mechanic. He was a violin maker. He made boats. He shot firearms and all this other stuff. Like, he taught me how to shoot with a BB gun. He used to set off rockets. He used to set off help my uncle set rockets and learn science and stuff like that. My grandfather, and he could tell you anything he needed to know. My grandfather was really one heck of an encyclopedia, and he was also good at giving amazing advice. Amazing advice. And there's a few funny stories, He was always like one day they were gonna go get groceries and stuff like that, and they ended up buying a bunch of fireworks, and I think it was I think this was like the 40s, and I think this was like the early 40s, back when money was rolling in, back in again. But so they bought all these things, and they wanted to send them all off, and my great grandmother was like, "No, you're returning these, and you're getting the food back. You're getting the money so I can get my food." So yeah, they wanted to have a little destruction. As I said, they were kind of wise asses. They were kind of like, "Oh, we're gonna kind of set this off, so kind of see where we got the penchant for rockets." And I think they did eventually buy. I think my grandfather said they kept a few and set them off when they weren't looking, but in somebody else's house when they weren't looking. This is back when fireworks were actually legal. There was no ordinances like we do now, because everybody's all gets all barred. But Um, and he was always good. And as I said, he was always good at giving advice and life lessons. One of my favorite ones has to be. For those of you who are long-time viewers, you guys will know about his time in the mechanic. Him giving advice to a guy that wanted a raise, but he ended up. Um, it was probably one of the most impactful stories, and it taught my grandfather a lesson about just how to do this. But my grandfather was a reserve guy. When he came to work and when it came to livelihood and being a breadwinner, he was very serious. He was very cautious, and the war and the depression the war and the depression and kind of being kind of rationing kind of taught him that. So one guy, some hotshot, some guy who really knew his stuff, and my grandfather said the guy really knew his stuff. Like he was a few years old, and he was not an ace mechanic, but he was a very good one. He was an amazing mechanic, and he learned a lot from my grandfather. Learned a lot from him because he was an older gentleman. Problem was though, he wanted a raise. My grandfather said to me, and he was telling me this story. He goes, Mike, I told him, you can ask him for a raise tomorrow, the next day. The next day, don't ask him today because he's in a bad mood. Don't ask him today because I said, you will not like him. I already went up to him today and I almost got shoved out the door myself and I backed away and I said, I'll leave you alone. So my grandfather kind of knew, and the other guys kind of like, yeah, he's in a bad mood, but don't do it. And he says, he goes, no, Joe, I'm gonna do it. I don't care. He'll cool off, he'll do whatever. He goes, no, I think he might be. I said, I don't know what happened. Either I don't know what happened, but he was pissed about. But his boss was pissed about something. And he goes, don't do it. I wouldn't do it. I said, you're a good guy. Don't throw it away. You can get the raise. Just don't ask him today. You definitely deserve it. You're a great guy. Blah 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 blah. And you're a great guy, and said I learned a lot and all this other stuff, and we all work as a team. I said, don't ask him for a raise. Ask him tomorrow. And my grandfather was adamant because he kind of knew what was going to happen. So they go through the day. My grandfather kept reminding me, said, don't do it. Well, they go to lunch. He goes up to actually ask the guy for the raise. Long story short, my grandfather was outside, so he didn't know what happened. But I think he told me, but I think he knew it was going to happen anyway because he was kind of adamant about it. Like my grandfather was like, it didn't take a fortune to know what it was going to happen because I saw him go from that direction, and they're all unpacking their tools for the next day for the afternoon, and he goes to the other guy. I forget the guy's name because my grandfather forgot the guy's name. Did forget. He had one of those forgettable names, but my grandfather went to him and says, "Oh, hey, what are we working on?" And the guy says, "Joe, I'm sorry, I have to go home." Or the boss, I've been let go because I thought I was going to get the raise. And he says, "I told you not." And he looked at him. He goes, "I told you not to do it. Go tomorrow. Go the next day, but don't tell him today." Moral of the story: kids and adults of all ages and people who just want to learn to just keep things to yourself, bite your tongue. It's so helpful. Probably one of the greatest things I've ever heard, and probably the reason why I probably survived so much stuff because I kept my mouth shut and just let things play out. Let the chips fall where they lie. When you let chips fall where they lie, you just let things play out, not seeing chips fall. For those of you who are, for those of you in the community who take things serious, literally as well as figuratively, but just a little education there. Just so next time somebody says where the chips lie, just tell them that means. That just means just let things play out and just let things play out and see how it ends up. Much like life when things come unexpected. That's one thing you taught me. He had a bunch of war stories that were great. He used to be stationed over in Japan, and he told me all the crazy stuff he's done over there. And he goes, and they were still rebelling from the bomb. So I forget where he was stabbed, but he has photo beyond photo in this green book with a tortoiseshell binding, and it's all woven, and everything's behind wax, and everything's on wax paper behind the thing, and you can't take the photos out because they're so old. This is 1950, 51, 53. There's a famous one of him and his buddies holding this dead alligator, and he's like, he has his mouth open, he's like, and stuff like that, and there's guys around him. He was also kind of he was a very good shot. He taught us how to shoot too, and he taught us how to shoot too. And you could learn so much from him just by listening to him. You didn't talk; you just listened to him, and you could learn some amazing stuff. And as I said, he made violins, he made boats. He used to teach rockets. He used to teach a bunch of stuff, and he would teach you life lessons. He would teach you, I asked him, I asked him why his marriage lasted so long, how he managed to keep things going, and and it taught me. He taught me to value. He married a very strong lady, so very stern Irish lady, so who kept him in line. So, well, over those 60 years, even to their dying days. So, he was always nice to her because she was great to him. She made sure he was okay and stuff like that. And so they were a happy couple. And I was like going over there and just shooting the breeze with him. I went over there so many times between 2012 and 2015 when he died. I went over every single day I could. I wanted to grab as much off him, whether it was Depression era stories or war stories or something like that. He always taught you something very good. And some of those teachings I should really put into play, but I don't. But I will be able to use, but I use them, but I use a lot of the ones he taught me from work because those are the most important. It's probably saved my job a lot of the time. So, but yeah, he was just overall a great guy, and he was at every family function. He was at Easter every year. He was at Easter every year. He was always. He was at Easter every year. He was at Christmas every year. He was at Thanksgiving every year. He would always have a story. He would always have a story and stuff like that. And he was always good with telling you about war. As I said, war stories. The Camden stories the Camden stories were probably the greatest, but I'll tell you guys. You tell those to you guys another time. Up in White Lake, New Hampshire, So it was great knowing him, and he was a wealth of information. A lot of the stuff I knew, I just didn't blow him off those last 3 years. It was around 2014 where we kind of knew that he was not going to do okay, and he needed a lot of surgeries, and his heart started to give him real trouble. He got fluid in his lungs, and he it wasn't until August of 2015 that we kind of knew that he only had a few to live. So it was around. I was sick one day. I was sick back in October of 2015, and as soon as I got better, because I didn't want to be around him when he was sick, I didn't want to throw him into a grave. My mother killed me, so I remember October. It was Saturday, October. Was it a Saturday? It was a Sunday. It was a Saturday. It was a Saturday and it was a Sunday. I remember. It was Saturday the 3rd. I remember him. Now, about a week prior, he fell downstairs going out of the house for an appointment, and he got a fracture in his foot, and it must have really sent his heart, his heart, which was already damaged, and stuff like that, into overdrive, and he just wasn't going to recover. They got him in, they stabilized him, and I think 3 days later, I think it was like September 30th, September 31st. Then 3 days later, 2 days, 9 years ago, I had just finished a shift at work from, I think it was a 9 to 4. I think it was either a 9 to 4 or an 8 to 4. I got home. I ended up going in there. This was probably, actually no, I got out at 6, and then I ended up getting home and showering up and going to the, and he was already morphined up, and he was kind of in a peaceful state, and I just let him know I was there, and I kind of knew it was kind of bad because my mother was kind of in a sad state. We kind of left her alone, and I was in that hospital from 8 o'clock till about 11:30 at night, and then I had to go back home. And then I knew I had a closing shift on Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock, and because I had to get up for that. I couldn't just slug around. I was in a terrible state. I wasn't very happy because I saw him suffering and stuff like that. And of course, you know, my brothers told me the the day after that he had passed away, and the funeral services would be on Tuesday or Wednesday, that day. So I think it was the 6th or the 7th, and it was, and no, and it was never a good sign when it was never good. It was, a lot of, we kind of knew it, but we didn't want him to go. So I think it was at like 6:45 on I think it was 6:45 on Sunday morning, way before I got up. I got up like 9 o'clock. That they told me he passed. That my brothers told me he passed away, and because my dad and my mom, because my mother had been called. I noticed the call had been placed around 6:40. I was in bed because I was trying to get enough sleep for work. And then they told me the news, and I was there early. And it was in that moment I knew his soul had passed on, and he lost a great guy, an amazing guy. So usually I do a moment of silence for this, but I usually do moment of silence for this, but I'd rather pay tribute to him and leave you guys with thoughts of his spirit. He was a great guy. He was a great grandfather. He was a great father. He was a great uncle. He was a great mechanic. He was a legend. He was an encyclopedia. He was a builder, a creator, a tinkerer, wiseacre, storyteller, teacher, and just an overall, outstanding guy. So, Grandpa Dom, I know you're up there. I know you're up there, buddy. I know you're smiling. I know you're probably keeping order up there. Some of you instilled in me, which is why I keep things in order at work. So, and I dedicate my hard work today on Friday yesterday on Friday to you. So, and I thank you for that, for having that work ethic in my spirit. So, um, you always taught me to push on even when things get tough. So, but yeah. All right, everybody. I'm gonna do this one to do. I'm gonna upload it probably. I'm probably gonna upload this in the morning, probably 8 o'clock, and I'm gonna do a gear change show tonight. Tonight, since it's technically Saturday, I'm gonna do a gear change show tonight. Well, actually, no. I actually, since he was a mechanic, I'm not going to do a gear change show tonight because this will technically be a tribute for the 4th and into the 5th. So, yeah, this is going to count as my vlog for the day because I already uploaded yesterday, so I'm going to upload videos today. So, but yeah, I am going to do this one to do, and I will see you guys tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night. But thank you guys for being here for Nightcast 82. 82, it's the first one in ages. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to do a new numbering system. So, this is Nightcast 1. This is Nightcast this is Nightcast 1. So, when you guys see the thing, it'll say NC in Nightcast Radio NCR24-1, and it'll be Nightcast number 1. So that's how I'll do it. So I can have more variety. So because I need to spice things up a little bit now that the year's kind of closing down. So. But I'll see you guys later. Peace out, and I will see you guys. Hopefully, this will be uploaded by, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock. So, but I will see you guys later. Peace. And amen. And long live the spirit of my grandpa. Oh, is it Grandpa or Anthony Joseph Dominicucci? I salute you. Good night, folks.